Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope that you all can hear me. If you cannot hear me, please let me know. I'm Daniela Garru from the Brazilian Tunneling Committee, Treasurer. And tonight we have one more webinar. We are very honored to have Antonia Cornaro here. Before I introduce Antonia, I would like to remind you to follow our channel and also give like if you haven't done so. This month, we to celebrate the women in tunneling as well. We have many webinars with women, and we have Antonia today. And on March 25th, we will have received seven guests from different areas, all tunnelers, to discuss about the challenge to be a woman working in tunneling. So I would like to introduce Antonia. Antonia has been working for 10 years at Amberg Engineering in underground space development. She's co-chair of the ITACOS, the Committee for the Use of the Underground Space from the ITA, the International Tunneling Association. There, she promotes workshops, webinars, and conferences. Together with Han Admiral, co-chair of ITACOS, she wrote the book Underground Space Unveiled, Planning and Creating the Cities of the Future. She's also a lecturer at ETH Zurich for planning of the underground space. Antonia's focus is on underground space planning, on how to enrich cities by using underground space and connecting it to the surface with transportation infrastructure and utilities. Also, how to make cities more sustainable through the use of the underground space. So I welcome Antonia. Hello, Antonia. Yes, that's much better. Hello, Antonia. We are very honored to have you here as our guest from the Brazilian Tunneling Committee. Welcome, and I hope that we all have some fun tonight, and I can start sharing your. Oh, okay, here. Okay, so please welcome.
Thank you, Daniela. Thanks to the Brazilian Tunneling Committee. Boa tarde. Sorry, this will all be in English, but Daniela tells me she will translate questions in the end. And I have been to Brazil and I understand a few words, but that's about it. So really happy to be here on this webinar today. I will cover sort of an insight and a perspective on underground spaces, taking it from the past to the present to the future. I will also want to honor my co-author and co-chair of ITACOS, Han Admiral. We together, as Daniela said, wrote a book on underground spaces, and we also co-chair the ITA Committee on Underground Space. And this is Han Admiral. He's a Dutch engineer. He also gives a lot of webinars and presentations worldwide. And he's been to Brazil actually many times, also working on the Porto Maravilha project, for instance. Here you see a project, here the book title, and you can get it really like at ICE Publishing, but also Amazon, and maybe in your university library. There's digital versions as well. And we have a dedicated website for the book, thinkdeep.net, where you get more insight on what it is about, what this Think Deep is about, the deep thinking. And the book also has an Instagram page and a Facebook page. Okay, so I want to also start with saying about ITACOS, the committee I co-chair, that it's very much a committee that looks at sort of a vision of future cities with incorporating underground space development. And we very much also foster a dialogue between planners and engineers and everyone really working in the built environment, geographers and geologists, developers. And environmentalists, to name a few, as well as architects, of course. This is our committee. I'm just showing you this because we're a very active committee. We have a worldwide participation and representation. So follow us. We have a LinkedIn page, Ithacus, and we have, of course, the web page of the ITA, which you see. I have it afterwards blended in. And we give webinars at the moment a lot, since we can't travel to congresses in person. So please follow us and join us for great conversations on thinking deep. Today, I will start with the historical approaches to underground urbanism and show you a bit on these yaodongs from China that were really courtyard dwellings dug into the soil there, into this very hostile plateau in terms of climate. It was very windy, and the people there had refuge. And these dwellings are used till today and very popular because also climatically they give the residents a very cozy shelter. They are dug in vertically down, and then the rooms are tunneled in sideways. Here you see what they look like. And what is great, that you can even bring trees in to the -1 level, and it's like a sunken courtyard development, right? How do we bring this form into today's world, into today's underground urbanism? Well, here, for instance, an example of the Artes Academy for Dance and Music in Arnhem, the Netherlands, where the faculty had to expand, was out of space, couldn't expand above ground because it's a protected site, it's World Heritage, the Rietveld Academy. And the architect said, let me develop something underground. And it was it was faced with suspicion and also kind of people were thinking this wouldn't work. But now it's extremely popular, and you see how the space is filled with light. There's a side of light to the sky, and the room, you don't even feel like you're underground. Everybody loves the space, and at the same time, you see that the surface was completely remained intact, and there's no obstruction of vision or anything. And another modern example of how we can take this Yaodong concept forward is, for instance, here in Seoul, South Korea, the Gangnam International Transit Center. This was developed by Dominique Perrault Architecture, and it really connects the Gangnam district in Seoul with another major avenue. And Seoul said we need more green spaces, and we need more open spaces, and we need to make it more pedestrian friendly for our population. And here you see what this light walk will look like, basically spanning a large section of the city with 6 underground levels, connecting to the metro, connecting to shopping, connecting to offices, connecting even to park spaces underground. And you see the lightway on top. That is the linear park on the surface. Now, I said to you in the beginning that we have the Yaodong concept, which was basically dug down vertically into the earth, like you see here on the right. But also what happened since prehistoric time was people developed cave-like dwellings, man-made caves, like you see this cavern here on the left. And this is, for instance, taken from the long-term strategy for cavern development from the city of Hong Kong, which is really thinking of how do we expand in the urban core going vertically down, and how do we apply certain uses and relocate certain uses into caverns in the hillsides around the city of Hong Kong. These are how one basically makes caves. You're all in the tunneling business, so you of course know about this. And we nowadays have a lot of applications for it in terms of uses for these caverns. So this is quite an exceptional one. For instance, a swimming pool in Finland, but that doubles up as a people shelter in times of emergency. And for instance, in Hong Kong, we're also looking at several large facilities that need massive amount of space on the surface of the city. At here, for instance, prime waterfront development will be relocated into the mountain hillside. And actually, Amberg Engineering, we're doing a study for the city of Hong Kong together with local partners on this, and not just to locate sewage treatment plant in the hillsides, but also other uses that need a lot of space in the core city. For instance, data centers, but also laboratories, things that really can easily be sort of off-center and in a cool and safe and protected environment in the mountain, in a cavern. Here you see one that's already realized in Hong Kong, a smaller one. The planned one will be much larger. But also in Switzerland, we are applying very innovative uses for these caverns. For instance, we're working on prototyping for data centers in underground caverns. And that is all to be seen in the Hagerbach Test Gallery, which is a large gallery and cavern network, an hour from Zurich, where I live. And there one can prototype and test applications one-to-one. And in fact, this is also where we're streaming a lot of webinars from. So for you tunnelers from Brazil and from around the world, this would be really enriching for you to join us. We just had one 2 weeks ago on demonstrating underground spaces and showing the various applications that are happening there. And there will be one led by Ithacus on the 21st of April. And I will make sure to share the invitation with the committee, Brazilian Tunneling Committee. We're also working on a prototype of underground green farming. And that's not the greatest picture, but we're really growing greens and salads in the underground, in the cavern, because what we want to demonstrate is that we're running out of space on the surface, and we need a lot of land and a lot of water, and also we are very weather dependent on the surface. And here we have the advantage, we can grow 365 days a year in a sheltered environment without pesticides, obviously, and needing very little water. A quick look back, because I said to you I'm covering a bit of the past to the present to the future in terms of tunneling. We had this revolutionary engineering and unrivaled optimism going on in the 19th century when we first expanded our rail networks. And this is supposedly the oldest such difficult stretch of rail connection that was built from Vienna to Trieste, so from Austria to Italy, so bridging the Alps, and very narrow gauges, very different difficult gradients, and very difficult terrain. And you see it needed viaducts and it needed tunnels. And now it's a UNESCO World Heritage, this rail line. And a base tunnel is being built underneath to really reduce increase the speed and reduce the travel time. But at the time, this was considered revolutionary, right? In terms of covering space, conquering terrain, conquering difficult terrain, and really conquering time as well, because rather than having to go with the horse carriage over these difficult alpine passages, the train significant huge progress, and tunneling was a big part of that. And what I want to point out about that is this revolutionary engineering and unrivaled optimism that was taking place at the time. One thought of projects like the tunnel below the Strait of Gibraltar, the iron tunnel below the Bosporus, the tunnel under the Sund connecting Denmark and Sweden. And all of these projects took like 100 years before they became a reality. And some are still on the drawing board. So here you see the one on Gibraltar connecting Northern Africa and Spain. And for instance, we worked on this feasibility study, but you can imagine how difficult to bridge two continents and along a major fault zone. But not only that, it's of course the political aspect. It has to be the right geopolitical project. And at the moment, this is probably off the drawing board. But I'm sure this will be once again be talked about in the future and probably realized, like this project of the Bosporus crossing, bridge, connecting Asia and Europe in the city of Istanbul, which was also a huge engineering feat to get that realized. As much as the tunnel connecting Denmark with Sweden and really creating out of two different countries, one economic zone between the cities of Copenhagen and Malmö with this tunnel. Here you see the bridge, and then the tunnel disappears underneath the sea and connects to the rest, to the mainland then again. So the art of convincing is what is needed, and especially back then, this is, for instance, the first under river tunnel that was built by Brunel, in a very famous British engineer at the time. And his tunnel he was convinced he could do this, but his tunnel kept being flooded, and he kept trying. And of course, it's a trial and error thing. And he had to then convince his investors and the major politicians that were backing this project to come into the tunnel and have a banquet after he managed to make it dry and say, we're getting this project done. And they were so amazed by this that they said, yes, absolutely, and kept backing him, although the project was delayed and took more time. But what I'm saying is it takes this optimism to really revolutionize engineering. And I think we have really managed that. And in the sense of urbanism and underground urbanism, so much has happened as well. I mean, in the beginning of the 19th century, Paris was first laid out in terms of these grand avenues and boulevards. And it was actually this gentleman, Baron Haussmann, who said the underground galleries are kind of like the organs of the metropolis. They function like that of a human body without ever seeing the light of day. And then he also said, sort of, we can carry pure and fresh water, we can carry light and heat. And all this movement can be in the subsurface, and that will actually help us develop our city. But he really created this urban service layer for Paris in terms of waste was transported like that, and also gas, and what amongst all he wanted electricity and heating, and he wanted to be the first city in Europe that would have light. And that's why Paris is called the city of light, because it had this very early network of gas and electricity distribution in its underground. And to this day, we all know it as the city of light. But it took very early thinkers to come up with schemes like that and push them through. And another very early thinker in France that I want to highlight is Edouard Autodidjan, because he was really the first who sort of created a committee of an urban underground, who was interested in underground development. and made an Exposition Internationale. And he's really the forerunner of the French Tunnel Association. And the French Tunnel Association is very active to this day. And all these early urbanists and thinkers actually were sort of the forerunners of what is today the International Tunneling Association. And first it was called International Tunneling, and now it's called International Tunneling and Underground Space Association, because we're not talking about the tunnels being the linear connectors for transport or utilities and the like, but also the whole space in the subsurface and how that is used. And that's also where ITACUS, the committee, comes in that I co-chair. And here you see the web link of the committee, which is also found on the ITA website. But now what we need to ask ourselves, so how do we tackle this underground space? So we've seen in the past, people already used it for habitation very early on. It protected them, it was a shelter. But then it sort of more and more gradually was seen as this urban service layer, like let's ban everything that we don't want on the surface into the subsurface. And that is something where I think it is a much better resource than we think, and that we're giving it the status of. So just quickly blending in this sustainable cities and communities goal of the United Nations. There are 18 goals in total to improve our cities and life on planet going forward. But the one on 11 is the sustainable cities and communities one. And we have to ask ourselves, how can we use the subsurface to make our cities more resilient, more smart, more sustainable, and more livable? How can we future-proof our cities using this precious asset that we have below our feet? And this is where disaster risk reduction comes in, and there's a whole United Nations office dealing with that. And ITACUS got them to incorporate this wording in their policy statements, saying that it was important to design large underground spaces, for instance, car parks or tunnels or other underground structures, because they can serve a variety of disaster risk functions. They can hold off stormwater when you're flooded as a city, temporary water retention. They can be refuges. They can be vital connectors for emergency relief, but also communication lines. But then, of course, for water, energy, and waste removal. So all these are incredibly important functions in keeping our cities afloat. And here we see some of the examples quickly, like the threats of climate change. We have more frequent, highly intense precipitation in our cities. And when we don't have urban drainage or not sufficient capacity, you all know what happens. Our streets get flooded. And there's some very clever examples, for instance, here in Rotterdam, where this underground car park can also function as a stormwater runoff facility. And as first one deck gets closed off for parking, and if necessary, both decks get locked off for that. And for instance, Tokyo has built this enormous underground system for urban drainage overflow, which is like a temple-like structure. And here you see how, for instance, the city of Prague is dealing with a 90-kilometer long network of utility tunnels serving the city. Pipes, steams, water mains, high and low voltage cables, and telecom. And also we have sea defense measures that can double up as underground with an underground function. For instance, here in the Netherlands, that is a sea defense dune to the North Sea, which you know is very strong in the Netherlands, which is a very low-lying country. And they made these very clever structures that sort of have dune-like effect and also shape, but at the same time, they're underground parking garages. So we really need to think about how we can use our infrastructure in a smart way and also use it for dual uses. Because at the end of the day, we want our cities to be open spaces as well, where people can play, where people can do sports, where people can get fresh air. And these open green spaces really help us filter out CO2 and reduce temperatures and avoid heat island effects. And there are some architects who are now coming up with really smart systems for city centers. This one is for Paris by Dominique Perrault Architecture. You basically open up the underground space, you connect it with the surface. You have the pedestrian uses very low, close to the surface level. You have other uses like parking, like shopping, like public spaces, like offices, of course, also utilities. And you can densify the city like that without using up land. And not only that, but it's cleverly used or powered with geothermal energy. So this is what this scheme looks like. So we really need to future-proof our cities, be it against natural disasters, be it against population growth, be it against climate change. The challenges that we're confronted with are manifold, and a functional infrastructure is definitely key for the future. And if we look at this Hyperloop system that's now being proposed in many parts of the world and that's being developed as we speak, we have to ask ourselves, this will be very exposed if it's on the surface, on these stilts. That should probably be in the subsurface where you can create unhindered connections much easier. Like this system here in the bottom, which is Cargo Souterrain, which is a Swiss project that will deliver cargo underground. It will eventually span the entire country, but for now, a first stretch between two major cities, Zurich and Basel, is being designed. The advantage of such a system is we can deliver 24/7 and we're not cluttering up road space, which is crazy because the growth in cargo delivery is skyrocketing and the roads cannot hold the truck traffic anymore. So this is a very smart system that's also very environmentally friendly. And more we have to think also of our multimodal transport hubs as having these various layers and various layers in the subsurface, and really also connecting them, integrating them into the central areas of the city with pedestrian plazas, with trees, and with solar lighting, with clever energy systems that cleans the air, that make us breathe, that make us at the same time catch our train home or our metro or a bus or quickly reach our office destination when we're coming from outside the city. This is Utrecht Central Station in the Netherlands, and it's the station, it's the country's largest station, and it's had to double up in capacity recently because it couldn't manage the growth, and the concept seems to be very functional. Also in China, one realizes many very well thought out underground complexes in all the major metro stations and intermodal hubs. When we tunnel, we can create spaces on the surface. Like here you see Madrid. We have a situation with the surface inner city highway in place on the left, where we can't access the river. We have pollution. We have filth and crime happening because these places are not safe and they're not nice and they're not accessible. And the neighborhoods around are therefore deteriorating. Here, of course, it's already being cleaned up and so on, but I can show you other pictures from before where it really didn't look good. And then on the right, you have the tunnels in place. The whole multi-lane highway system was tunneled, and Madrid gained this 1 million square meters of green space. And obviously, real estate prices went up, and also it's such a respite for the Madrileño population to have this green lung in the city center. So when we tunnel and when we build infrastructure projects in general, we can't forget that we're actually building for people, and we're building valued underground spaces where we want people to feel comfortable, where we want them to feel basically where they can also relax or meet or enjoy. And there's several pictures here of various ones, but the top one in the middle is, for instance, the new women's university in Seoul, which was kind of groundscaped in the earth and creating a park on top. And the one on the bottom is a plan for an underground park in a former trolley terminal that's no longer used, bringing in fiber optic light down there. And now I want to show you a video on Porto Maravilha, because we haven't talked about Brazil, but this is happening when we take the road infrastructure underground. Please maybe turn your volume up on your computers or phones.
We are very honored to have Antonia Corrado here.
So I absolutely love this video because it shows what we can achieve in cities when we bring the infrastructure that's not needed on the surface underground. Beautiful project from Rio de Janeiro, really opening up the waterfront and creating a wonderful quality of life. I think the project is almost complete as far as I know. And just a quick wrap up now, what we talked about. So the use of subsurface over time was really like for shelter, for storage, for urban utilities, for digging. They were vital arteries for cities. That was realized early on. For mass transportation, we're now tunneling major projects. We're expanding rails. We had underground urbanism. And we are realizing that now we also need to be more conscious of developing sustainably and making our cities more resilient and more future-proof. And we can actually apply concepts of the underground space for that. So the urbanization of tomorrow really requires a very careful and optimal use of our urban space resource, because it's a resource and we're often not realizing that. The underground has space and it has potential for many uses, which I think I showed you quickly during the presentation. We need an integrated planning of surface and the subsurface. We don't want them to be separate layers. And we want to, of course, answer to all requirements from society, environment, industry, and transport. So it's a difficult endeavor. Therefore, we need this dialogue between planners, architects, and engineers and other associated professions. We also need a planning approach involving the subsurface and connectivity and combination of uses. And the future is out there, and a large part of that future is still below the surface. So help us unveil it, because space loves underground. And with that, I want to thank you, and I'm very open to any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. It's very inspiring presentation, very beautiful. I could see here in the comments everybody was talking about the pictures, and it's really, really beautiful. It's also nice the part of the past, know how much they had to convince, like Brunel and in the beginning, and
Yeah.
it's exactly the same. We have lots of people watching, and then we have many questions. So everybody's saying hello. It's really a large chat here. I have to go back to see everybody. It's lots of people commenting. I know that Jean-Pierre sent some questions here. Okay. So Jean-Pierre, that's also from the Brazilian Tunneling Committee. Antonia, I believe that issues related to the presence of water in the underground associated with possible difficulties in the aspects of ventilation still represent challenges in the use of underground space for housing. How do you see the effectiveness of solutions to address these issues?
Yeah, no, good question. Definitely, we have a lot of challenges to deal with in the subsurface. And I don't need to tell you that you're all professionals in the field. And I'm personally not a tunnel engineer. I'm an urban planner by background, but I have worked with tunnel engineers a lot, and I know the issues at stake. And of course, it depends very much on the geology of a city, on what we can realize and how easily or how difficult it is to realize. And waterproofing is definitely one, but I think the technology is amazing in that sense. What different methods we now have in that sense, and also in terms of ventilation. So I can't give a general answer, because it of course depends on the local situation or the exact project situation. But I've seen a lot a lot of very clever solutions to these issues in many projects around the world now.
I think he has another question here. How are the management and registration aspects of the infrastructures that make use of the underground in Europe being addressed? Here we constantly face problems related to the lack of reliable data from our subsoil. It's a bit of contract issue.
The data, very good question. The data is a huge issue. If we don't know what's underneath, we don't know what's already in the subsurface, and also the geological conditions. We're very lucky, for instance, in Switzerland, we have the Swiss Topographic Office, which now has actually made available all data for public use. So there's fully open data in the sense of ground conditions. And I know a lot of countries are starting to prepare that. For instance, the UK, Great Britain is doing that because they know what a vital resource it is, and that they can't make any smart moves if they don't know what's underneath their feet. Also, the US is doing a lot in that sense. For instance, the city of Chicago, especially these old cities where a lot of things are buried in the subsurface and haven't been mapped in the past, or the data is not available or not in the right format. So there's really remarkable things going on in terms of digitizing the underground, scanning the underground, and having smart data available. But it's still work in progress everywhere, to be honest.
Yes.
It's a big task.
Yes, yeah, I agree. So Claudio Diaz is just saying hello, good night from everybody, for everybody. Oh, my dog is also wanting to interact. I was hoping he was quiet. Okay, I have some bag of snacks. Okay, so he's saying that is the best, the team that he most like is his favorite team. So he's saying hello from Spain. We have people from all over the world, what I can see here. Next question we have here. Congratulations, Antonia. It was really fantastic presentation. Thanks a lot. Here we have from Eloy, from our president from the Brazilian Tunneling Committee. Antonia, which cities worldwide are doing the most in terms of underground space development?
Okay, so let me see. I would say at the moment, definitely Hong Kong, because they're really looking at a citywide strategy, for the urban subsurface, but also for the cavern developments in the fringes of the city. And they really looked at the locations, thought about which uses could go where, also discussed that with the planning department of their city. So the engineering department with the planning department with the Bureau of National Development, sort of a really cooperative interagency thing. And Singapore as well is really looking into their subsurface and about to sort of do a first step of a master plan for it. And also Helsinki in the past has done a master plan, but that was really done by geologists. So it's not so much a real planning strategy, but as far as I know, they're also embarked on a sort of second edition of that master plan and update. We also have Canadian cities that have big underground cities, where they're doing a lot, but I don't know if they're really thinking on a strategic citywide level or if it's just in the urban core. And then also countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, sort of several countries around Europe are really starting to see the subsurface as a vital resource, and we need to plan for it.
Yes. So before more questions, more congratulations, Antonia. It was a really fantastic presentation. Thanks a lot. Also, Jairo, thanks, Antonia, for this great presentation. Porto Maravilha, in terms of traffic infrastructure, is fully open since 2016, Olympic Games in Brazil. Everybody was commenting also that they enjoyed that you showed Porto Maravilha. And here, hi, Antonia, another great presentation. What do you believe to be a realistic target for the implementation of underground space in major cities around the world in the next 50 years?
A major target. So I think a major target should be that we have the data available that we need to actually plan it and to really set policy guidelines in terms of making sure we're using our space wisely and not just paving over our cities, but really thinking how do we keep our cities livable and habitable in the future as well? How do we move all these people around? We need, of course, mass transportation. That is clear, like you in Sao Paulo, and I suppose in Rio are building these kind of metro systems, and really think how to incorporate the subsurface in terms of helping us make our cities more resilient and more sustainable in the long run.
Yeah. And what about Elon Musk?
Oh yeah, he's my favorite. I left him out because I didn't have time, but I think he's doing a great job because he's challenging the tunneling industry to think, are we really on the forefront of technology? Are we doing all we can to build tunnels faster and deeper and everywhere and so on? So I'm very curious about the projects he's doing in the underground, and I think he has the drive and he has the he has the financial resources to do this on his own certain experiments, and he's also implementing a mass transport system now. I think it's in the city of Chicago, connecting the downtown core with the airport with this fast hyperloop system. So that will be a good thing if we see the proof of concept, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. It's starting lots of discussions. No, recently I think that there was some article that Martin Herringknecht commented about Elon Musk ideas, plans.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it's interesting. So lots of people saying great presentation. We have a colleague that Valentin Brock. He sadly missed the presentation, and I just wanted to let everybody know that if you also have missed, that you can watch the presentation anytime you want. It's going to be in our channel. We have other presentations, some of them also in English. I have one question here that I missed from Julienne, that's from our young member crew. Antonio, you have shown us how urban environments will be affected by growth and by sprawl in the future. What does this mean for places like Brazil?
Yeah, I think a lot of countries in Latin America are probably the cities are in coastal regions, and we have a lot of in-migration from rural areas to the cities. So Sao Paulo for sure is one of the biggest cities worldwide. And sometimes one hears crazy stories in Europe that the only way to quickly propel yourself from one point to the next is by helicopter. And this is, of course, I mean, it's not funny. I'm just saying, we these are large congested cities, right? And with millions of people, and we need to really make sure we accommodate. We still can maintain a certain livability for these people, for these inhabitants, and at the same time not kill all the natural environment that's still left, because that's such an important ecosystem that will actually help us live in these cities, right? To reduce CO2 in the air, we need green, we need trees. A lot of cities are now re-greening their urban cores. Like Beijing is doing a huge amount of greening of trees around its city because it's choking in traffic and pollution. So I haven't been in Brazil in a while, and I haven't been to Sao Paulo. I've been to Rio and I've been to Minas Gerais, and from what I know, I mean, Brazil is a vast country, right? So you do have space, but of course you have people flocking to the major cities. So I think definitely making sure your planners are talking to your engineers, to your geologists. Create a think deep group. That's what I recommend. Create a think deep group.
Yes.
And have them incorporate the subsurface.
Yes, yes. We've been talking a bit here regarding the drainage issue with the floods. So we would like also to show that there is a solution. There might be a intelligent solution with the deep drainage system. The challenge is because a system like this would take long, so from planning until construction, and then it's longer than the mayors or the senators are in the election. Also, they are just interested in something that's fast and short, and so that's the biggest challenge. Here, Michael de Souza, I think he's my colleague from Queen's University. Hi, Mike. Hi, Antonia. Loved your presentation. Very informative and great slides. How do we manage underground utilities when constructing in an urban space? And I think he also complete his question here. He said, to amend my question, existing underground utilities.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is not easy because, of course, we have already buried a lot in the subsurface, and we need to maintain that those utilities. What I've seen, there are really there are new systems. I've seen them implemented in Sweden, but we also have one in Switzerland, where you have these utilidors, where you have really in one tunnel tube you have all the various utilities that you need neatly stacked and organized, and that helps you not having to dig a hole every time you have a problem everywhere, but they're actually you can actually access them in one go, so to say, and fix several problems at the same time. So I think utilidors are the answer to that one.
Yes. There are many more questions here. So Carlos asks, Antonia, what are the limits to use the underground space in your opinion? Thanks a lot.
Limits. Limits.
That's very general.
Of course, I think limits are in our heads, to be honest, and nowhere else. Because I've seen so many fantastic things being realized, and I've also seen things realized where political will was not there in the first place, and through lobbying, people managed to convince politicians that something like that was needed. And even when you say, for instance, the stormwater runoff tunnel, for instance, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia built one, and just by using toll, and also Australia does that, they can bring in the necessary revenue to finance the scheme. Or the Cargo Souterrain project in Switzerland, the underground cargo connector that I showed, is purely privately financed. So you need to bring the right stakeholders on board, lobby for the project, and don't wait for politicians to,
Yes.
go for it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that we suggested, Tarcisio Celestino suggested already this scheme like Kuala Lumpur. But we keep hearing from politicians that, oh, here is Brazil, everything is different. But I think that it's a matter of fighting and convincing, like
And
Brunel did.
and also I've seen a very interesting concept, for instance, that's now being done by Paris, the ring
Yeah,
metro around Paris, but also in Hong Kong, that you develop, you finance kind of your metro construction through station development. So you can kind of offset the costs, and you have kind of office towers on the stations, like really maximizing the real estate on the stations. And there's a chapter on that in our book, on how you capture the value that you actually create with building underground.
yes, yes. So here we have Marcelo Reis referring to the famous Santos Guarujá tunnel, never built. So we have, I don't know if you heard about the Santos Guarujá tunnel.
No.
It's supposed to be our first water tunnel, just like the one in Denmark. Which project deals with a submerged tunnel, different from the tunnel excavated in rock below the water layer? Which project was different from the tunnel excavated in rock? So, soil? I didn't. Okay, I will show the second. Could you name a few more tunnels that are submerged? And what encouraging words could be set for engineers and decision makers to accept the definition by the submerged tunnel option? So it's a big fight. I think that's 20 years fight probably. So there are two options. Either you go by viaduct, by a huge bridge, and then it will be larger, longer, or you can cut straight by tunnel. So this is a discussion going on, which option to take, and that would be the first submerged tunnel option as an option. So it's very much, there's lots of politics as well and economic interests, and maybe some. What about submerged tunnels around the world?
Yeah. More and more submerged tunnels are being realized. There was a recent one that created big waves between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. I don't know if you've heard about it. And then also in Taiwan. So the Southeast Asian countries, there's quite a few realized, and also in the Scandinavian countries. The Norwegians are building, especially a lot of them, connecting fjords to the mainland, because they have so much water, and they have very remote populations with mountains in between or water in between. So they build a lot of, even they're building now a floating tunnel as well. So that would be a good, you can check with the Norwegian Tunneling Society. They have publications, but also I'm sure you can find something. And for instance, we were involved with Amberg in a new connection that's supposed to be built between Finland and Estonia. So it's the Baltic Sea, and it would be the longest tunnel worldwide. It would be 100 kilometers long. And there were, I think, in the past also talks about a bridge, but now everyone is set on the subsea tunnel. So if you need ammunition for that, I'm sure there is a lot of good arguments and good projects to show.
Yes, yes, for sure. Yeah, I think that I'm not so sure if Marcelo is involved. He might be, but the CBTs also have some members that are involved in this lobbying for the tunnel. So I think we don't have more questions. We have a bunch of thank you, congratulations. I have another colleague from Queen's University, Chris Otamas, also from Itacos. Nice. We have many people saying thanks. Thank you so much. And Adriano also from the Brazilian tunneling. Great presentation. Everybody saying thanks. I think we finished our questions. Would you like to address something to close the?
Yes, why not? First of all, obrigado to all the Brazilian audience. I wish I was in Brazil and we could have caipirinhas together.
Maybe if we have the vaccine by the end of the year, we have the fifth Brazilian tunneling conference in December.
Oh, wow.
Let's hope that we all get vaccinated and maybe you can join us.
Because
Yes.
I wanted to say, Daniela, I was in the World Tunnel Congress in Iguazu. It was
Yes, I was
think
there.
it was 2014, I think. It was wonderful, and I know you first planned the Congress to be in Rio, but then it was in Foz do Iguaçu. I had a fantastic time. I loved it, and I
Yeah,
would
so
love
Marcelo's invite you to come and he will give you some caipirinhas.
Hey, excellent. Yeah.
Michelle will come also together with you.
That's my yoga teacher, Michelle. She's Brazilian.
That's
Oh, excellent. Ciao, Michelle.
great. We are very honored. We are really from Brazilian Tunneling Committee. Thanks a lot for accepting this invitation. I'm sure that was very special for all of us. We are very, very happy, very glad. Before I say goodbye, I just wanted to remind everybody that on March 25th, we have the debate with 7 tunnelers, ladies, contractors, from designers, from engineers, geologists, and then we will be discussing the challenge of being a woman as a tunneler. And by the end of the year, we have the 5th CBT. We are crossing the fingers. Everything is going to get better. We have vaccine, and then we can all enjoy ourselves, and also in the next WTC. So
Yes.
I would like to thanks again. Yes.
Thank you, Daniela, and thanks to the committee for inviting me. And also, I unfortunately forgot to prepare a slide inviting you to our next webinar of Ithacus, but I would love to, if a lot of you can be present, it will be a really lively and interesting 1-hour program on the 21st of April, and I will share the information with you, Daniela. And
okay, we will share in our channel. Yes, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Tanya.
Thanks, Daniela.
Yes, good evening to everybody. Stay safe.
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
Boa noite. Bye.